Hey, it's Sparky, Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan, and beautiful, lovely Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our guy Jacob Morley joins us now, filling in for Ryan Horvat here this weekend with Packer Report, 24/7 Sports. Follow him on Twitter at Jacob Morley. You know him for all of his great NFL draft work that he does year in and year out, and he was on fire going into the Packers draft this year, calling them one after another. And he was our draft guy on the Wendy's Big Show the last year we did the draft and did a great job there, too. All right, so let's first start off, I guess. Let's go back to the draft a little bit, and now let's look at where we're at. Is there anybody that you looked at when they drafted, thought one thing of, and now that you've seen the reports or games or whatever to this point of Packers training camp or exhibition games where you're like, okay, I think maybe my read was maybe wrong on that dude?
Yeah, I'll give you two. The first one would be Jaden Reed, because he's someone that I liked. I thought he was a good player. Kind of thought like, he's kind of your typical, slot only type guys, in a good one at that. But I had a 4th round grade on him, and he's someone that if you followed along like we do, especially for the receivers, we do the tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And the Packers typically love going after those tier 1 type guys, and it's a bunch of athletic measurables. Boxes you got to check, but then there's also a production score that's in there.
That's that RAS score or whatever they say.
That's athletic. So the production score, and this goes back to like Ted Thompson. If you look at Jordy, Greg, Devontae, James Jones was like this. In some sense, Christian Watson, they were all really productive in college. Like Devontae, Greg, and Jordy, at least at one point in their career, they're like top 3 in the NCAA in receiving yards in their college career. And then they hit all the athletic measurables too. So they like those guys, that check all those boxes and then get the production and all that stuff as well. And Jaden Reed was someone that throughout the whole process, it's like, man, here are the benchmarks for what they like as an athlete. And he is like the average of all of them. If the bar was here, he was right there on almost every single one of them. So I kind of wrote him off as like a tier 2 type guy because he was a little bit light. But man, I wish I wouldn't have. And because especially now you look at the way he plays and what he's been doing, he's someone that I really liked out of Michigan State, thought he'd be a good player. He looks like he could be a star.
But it wasn't Christian Watson love like you had 2 years ago.
No, not like that. Not like that. And I mean, and both those guys look like they're on the fast track to being really, really good NFL football players. So when it comes to there are certain things that the Packers are really good at. One of them might be evaluating quarterbacks. They might be better at that than everybody. We'll see. But one thing for certain is they do a really good job with their wide receivers and what they like. And there is a theme. And if you could give Goody some truth serum, I would wager to say if we're not close on that formula, like if we're not spot on, we're really close. So that's something we take pride in. And the other guy is Sean Clifford. My goodness.
Don't do it. Don't be
one of those guys. I'm not going to say he needs to be the starter or anything like that.
You did watch him at Penn State. You know the choke that dude is in big games. Don't do it.
Hopefully he doesn't ever have to. So here's the thing. Oh. When I say Sparky, when I say he's impressed me, I mean, I didn't think he was an NFL quarterback. I didn't think he should have been in a camp. After
physically, he's got the tools to play physically.
Did he at Penn State? I don't know. Like he always had a live arm, but man, that ball was everywhere. And you go, what was it? Was it Parker Washington, the wide receiver out of Penn State? He was a guy that you liked, but you're like, man, I think he would have been better if he had a better quarterback. And all that. So I don't know. So those are just two guys that to me have jumped out, and been impressive on top of a really impressive draft class is what it seems like. So yeah, those are two guys that I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see Jaden Reed in the regular season, and I'm excited to see Sean Clifford again next year in the preseason.
I want to stay draft focused a little bit here. We'll get into training camp practices. We'll get into Packers, Seahawks, confident, concerned, curious, all that stuff. But I got Morley. So I want to stay a little draft focused. I've seen some conversation on social media going, already looking at next year's draft and saying, well, they're going to have 2 1s if Rodgers plays 65% with the Jets, which everybody hopes happens. Obviously, they're not bashful about talking about that in Green Bay either. So if they get 2 first-round picks, do they take an offensive lineman with one of those 2 first-round picks? Because that's not been a Goody thing to this point. And if you are going to move on from Bakhtiari after this year, which I think they will, if you're going to trade Bakhtiari or do whatever it is you're going to do, then you have to figure out left tackle and right tackle. Zach Tom is a guy that can play kind of everywhere, it seems right now, but I don't know if he's a left tackle per se. But then you've got Walker, who they're liking what they're seeing from him, that gigantic mammoth human being that you can put in there. I guess I'm just not as sold. And based on early mocks, there's a bunch of tackles, it looks like, in the first round next year. So there's going to be a plenty there if that's what they want to do. I guess I'm just not as sold that they take an offensive tackle in the first round.
Well, it is weird because it seems like they have maybe 5 guys that can play offensive tackle on this team that can legit, you can throw in the game and you're not going to have to change your game plan with them in there. There are some teams that don't have 2. And so they've been really, really good at identifying the tackle type and being able to make them functional NFL football players. But on the interior, is not as good, right? We don't need to get into it, but they took Josh Myers over an All-Pro that's out there right now. They whiffed on that. And that happens. Like, I'm not going to sit here and throw stones, because you look at any NFL front office and they'll have something like that where they're kicking themselves too. But, that's seems like a big whiff, and it seems like they're trying to figure out that interior offensive line. And then if for whatever reason, obviously Elton Jenkins is going to be a Packer for a long time. They love him, as they should. He is a, borderline All-Pro type guard. But it seems like they've been trying to replace John Runyon Jr. since he's been in the starting lineup. And so I don't really get that. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's not back. So I don't know. I don't know what they do.
But you don't take unless it's some elite guard, you're not taking a guard or a center in the first round either.
No, and that's what I mean. I don't think they will or would, but they took Myers high and they took Elton Jenkins high. And one of them worked out and the other, the jury is out on. But going back to Ted, what did Ted always do? Give me your best. I'm going to take a left tackle. Give me your best collegiate offensive lineman and we'll find a spot for him. And I wouldn't be shocked if they went down that route of taking a tackle and transitioning him potentially to guard. But Steve, like at this point, and granted, this always changes. This always changes throughout the course of the year. But you look at this team and you say, what is their biggest weakness? I think the first thing you point to is safety.
Yes.
Right? That's a glaring need going into the season. Will it look that way going into next year? Because do you take a safety in the first round? I mean, they took Savage last time they had 2 first-round picks, or one time they had 2 first-round picks. So I could see them going that way too. But the point I'm trying to make is this is a deep team. This is a talented team. And you look at the last 2 years that Goody's drafted, there's a lot to like. And if Jordan Love is who they think he is, they're in a great spot moving forward. So it's going to be interesting, getting into the draft next year. It's so far away. It's hard to.
College football starts this weekend, man. With the evaluation starts now. We got to get going.
And Brugler dropped his top 50 today, which was awesome. That's the draft season never ends. These guys are in the K-State kid, BB, played at my rival high school that I coached against him in high school. He's a dog, and I think he was like his top 23rd overall player. So if you have 2 first-round picks and you got a little bit of a luxury and you're just like, what, we're sick of having to play whatever with our interior offensive line. Just give me that guy and let's plug him in for 10 years and let's go. So
I thought it was interesting today in practice, and it was brief. But it was Zach Tom at center. They took Myers out and they put Walker at right tackle with Bakhtiari at left tackle. And they left Jenkins and Runyon in there. And it wasn't, they didn't show it very long, because I'm following along on Twitter with everybody doing play-by-play. It wasn't very long, and then they went back to what they originally had it. I think they're thinking about it, and they may already made up their mind that there's a look that they're going to do, but they're not going to show it to anybody until they come out in week 1. Then everybody's gonna be like, what the hell happened? What is this? We haven't seen this in exhibition games.
This is I was talking on the Pack-A-Day podcast with Jacob Westendorf earlier this week. we were talking about this very thing and how the Packers have always been weird with their lineups. Like week one, they'll run out there with a group we haven't seen at all. And everyone's
Correct.
just like, what? So my projection was this. If they wanted to get real weird, is Bakhtiari at left tackle, Zach Tom at left guard, Elton Jenkins at center, John Runyon Jr., Rasheed Walker, finishing out your line that way. And it sounds like there's no way they would ever do that. No way. I don't know. They've done stuff like that before.
So let me ask you, why would you put Tom at guard and Jenkins at center versus just leaving Jenkins and putting Tom at center?
I don't know. Why do they do anything?
Something different.
Why did they start Billy Turner at left tackle in the playoffs when he didn't play there all year? I don't know.
No idea.
Why did they start Jake Hansen at guard week one last year? I don't know. They just do this stuff. They're weird.
That's true. Yeah, you got me. All right, let's talk about another decision made by the Packers. And as of right now, as we just said, things can change. But as of right now, it looks like TJ Slaton is going to play the nose and the Kenny Clark is sliding over. Do you like that move?
Yeah, I think any way you can free up Kenny to be more active and to get him in advantageous situations. I mean, he's their best interior defensive lineman. He's one of the best ones in the league. So, move him around. And I think TJ Slaton being able to do that is going to help him. And one thing, I just said he's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. And I do believe that, but Kenny has not been, I think if you go back the last really 2 seasons, Kenny has not really been that near all pro type that we kind of expect from him. And so I think with someone like TJ Slaton, someone with Wyatt being able to come into the picture, I think that's going to really help him just to be able to be that playmaker that they want him to be, that guy that can be, a field tilter when he's out there. So I think the emergence of TJ Slaton is really going to do quite a bit for this team, because I think TJ Slaton he's a first down run stopper who's got a little bit of juice as a pass rusher. And that's super useful. And I think that's going to be really helpful to this team. And, obviously a team that we've looked at in the past and teams that like to run the ball all over them. And that's the fear, right? Week one, the Bears come out and run for 400 yards on them, who the Bears obviously want to run the football. So we'll find out real early what that group is all about.
Week 2 against Atlanta is going to be all about running the football too, with Algier and Bijan Robinson. That's going to be probably a bigger test than even Chicago. Chicago's about stopping Justin Fields probably more than anything from him running the football. But Atlanta, with Arthur Smith as head coach, they're going to try and run the football as much as possible. What about Quay Walker, Mr. Morley? Thoughts on what he looked like his rookie year, and what should Packer fans want to see as far as taking that next step in his second year?
I mean, I thought his rookie year was up and down. I thought he started slow. He showed flashes, and that gets people excited, especially at the inside linebacker position. But the nitty gritty stuff of playing that spot for him, I thought there was something to be desired. And I think so for year 2, it's about consistency for him. And Eric Crocker, who is he's a 49ers ex-NFL player.
Follow him on Twitter.
49ers. Yep. He was talking, I thought he was making some really good points the other day. He was talking about just how are people successful in the NFL, and he was talking about the talent gap. And he just brought up, he's like, everyone in the NFL is out of this world talented. It's about consistency. Can you do it play in and play out?
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially you can run any NFL caliber player out there and they're going to make plays. They're going to flash, but it's what are you doing on the 12 other plays that you're on the field? Are you getting blocked 10 yards down the field, giving up a 20-yard run 3 times? Or are you, sticking your nose in there and doing your job to help your teammates and help your team? So I think with Quay, that's where we're at. He is supremely talented. When they drafted him out of Georgia, I thought maybe they would use him a little bit more as a blitzer. And I think that is something that has been discussed this offseason and something that we will probably see more of moving forward. At least I hope so, is putting him in a position to be that athlete that can get after the quarterback as well. So I think with him, that's the natural progression that you would expect to see out of him. And for him to be a true difference maker at the inside linebacker position. And a lot of people talk about how that position doesn't matter. You can plug anybody in there and you're going to be fine. The Chiefs won a Super Bowl a few years ago with guys dudes, just Jags there. And to an
That's
extent,
just the guy. For those of you listening, he
yeah,
did not call them Jags, literally.
no, not actual Jaguars,
Yes.
just the guy, just
Yes.
guys, replacement level players, right?
Yep.
And I agree with that sentiment to a point where, yes, if you want to just kind of plug and play guys, your Blake Martinez's of the world, insert any ex-Packer in there, Antonio Morrison, those type of guys, you can go get those guys. But if you have a true difference maker at the inside linebacker position, I think that's what separates good defenses from great defenses. I mean, look at the 49ers the last several years. Fred Warner is probably the best inside linebacker in football right now.
Yep.
And he just elevates that entire defense. So can Quay get to that level where he is a true difference maker? I don't know. I mean, he has every physical intangible to do so, but we will see. And so that's kind of what you hope eventually you get from him when you're going to take an inside linebacker in the top 25 that has those types of tools. So that's what I'm looking for is, do we see signs of that guy starting to come out in him?
And that's the thing. Haven't seen anything in preseason flash-wise. We've seen a lot from Ngabare coming off the edge. A kid they took out of South Carolina that, mid-draft pick, played well at South Carolina, but there wasn't a lot of hype around him. But he showed flashes here and there last season, and it looks like he's building on it now. And this whole thing of, we're going to take Lucas Van Ness because we need somebody to play opposite Rashawn Gary once Preston Smith is done. I don't know if they thought Ngabare was going to be taking that next step or if he's surprising people within the organization, but that dude can play.
Yeah, and with him, the knock on him was he just didn't test well. He's not, he's like the anti-Quay Walker, where he didn't have the 9.8 RAS, the stuff that the Packers usually love. I think it just got to a point in the draft where Goody looked at his staff and said, guy's too good. He's just too good to be sitting here on day 3. And with him, it's always been he's a technician. And it was the same way at South Carolina, where the way he would win was not really, I'm going to blow by you. I'm going to run by you to the quarterback. I'm going to break you down, and I'm going to use my hands, and I'm going to tie them together with my feet. And all that stuff is going to be so in sync that I'm hard to block. And when you play that way, you look athletic. When you watch Ngabare, do you think he's not a great athlete? I mean, the strip sack fumble recovery that he had.
Yep.
He looks like a freak athlete, but a lot of that is just because he's so intentional with everything that he does. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but the other guy that I think is similar to him, plays a little bit different position, is Carl Brooks out of Bowling Green. You basically said the same stuff about him coming out, where it's like, oh man, he didn't test that well. He's not a very good athlete, but watch him play. The guy knows how to play football. His hands and feet are incredible for a guy that's a rookie. He's way ahead of the curve in that regard. And it's the same thing. You do not watch Carl Brooks in the preseason and think, wow, this guy's a bad athlete, because
no, you don't.
same exact reason. He's so violent with his hands. His footwork is so nice. So it's hard. It's really, really hard to find pass rushers in the NFL. It's dang near impossible to find them on day 3. And it looks like, Inigbare looks like they found one. I'm willing to say that because he did it his rookie year. And Carl Brooks has been nothing but promising this rookie, training camp. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on that side of the ball.
With him playing that well, if that continues, Rashawn Gary obviously going to start. Preston Smith's going to start. So that's the third outside linebacker. Do you foresee a Rashawn Gary-like first year for Lucas Van Ness, where he's not going to be on the field a ton, but they're going to work him in there occasionally because I don't see how he gets in front of the other 3 at this point with essentially just being a bull rusher.
And that's exactly what Gary was when he came out. So, yeah, I think that's the plan. And it worked out really well for Gary, so why not? With Van Ness, I think you hit the nail on the head. Everything I just said about Inigbare and Brooks, Van Ness is not that right now. Van Ness, and again, Gary was the same way when he came out. He's going to line up across from you, and he's just going to basically say, hey, I'm bigger and athletic than most people you're going to see all year, and I'm just going to overwhelm you. I'm going to try to go through you every single play. And I think Van Ness has got some of that in him. And you see with Gary now, he's developed counters. He's developed more of his game. And he still has that part of his game where he's like, I will run through 18 brick walls to get to the quarterback. And I have no problem with that. And Van Ness is cut from a similar cloth. So I think they will be on the same kind of trajectory. And we didn't even talk about Justin Hollins. I think Hollins is in front of him
Great
too.
pickup.
And yeah, the Rams of all people thought this guy shouldn't be on our roster. But that's neither here nor there. And you look at Joe Barry and what
I don't want to look at Joe Barry. No.
At least think about him. I think so. What he wants is waves of pass rushers, right? And so I don't even look at it as like 1, 2, 3, 4. I just look at it wave 1 and wave 2. And I think your first wave is Rashawn and Preston, and then your second wave is Enigbare and Hollins, and then however many snaps you can get out of Van Ness. And maybe, they haven't really put him inside like they talked about maybe doing with him. And we haven't seen a lot of that until, was it today or yesterday?
I think it was yesterday or today, yeah.
Working with the defensive lineman. So maybe they've got something cooking there where he's going to be a situational pass rusher from the interior. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what he does his rookie year. And it is crazy because of this rookie class. He's not been not impressive. Like there have been some rookies that you're like, that guy's probably just not going to make it. But he's not been Jaden Reed. He's not been Carrington Valentine. He's not been Wooden or Brooks or Musgrave. Like any of those guys that have flashed, you see a little bit here and there from him. And I think they took him knowing that. Like he is a project's project. And that's just kind of the way they roll. And we hope it works out the same way as Rashawn Gary. So to answer your question in a long way, yeah, I think he's just going to be on that Rashawn Gary path.
You look at these practices, and like today, Andy Herman, Back in the podcast, I follow him I think he does the best play-by-play of all the beat writers. And they're doing all kinds of different stuff, right? Running reverses, jet sweeps, doing all this different stuff. And Andy Herman's like, boy, LaFleur is in his bag today running all this stuff. How much of this stuff you'll actually see in the regular season? Don't know. Because as LaFleur pointed out, like that snap the other day that hit Musgrave from center, he said, we just wanted to see what it looked like. He goes, and obviously that was our fault for how that whole thing played out. He goes, but then even when it did work, we didn't like how it looked anyhow, so that's gone. We scrapped it. We're not going to use that play anymore. We're going to move on. So they're literally trying a bunch of different stuff. But if you go back and you read everything that they kind of brought out today, and they kind of showed everybody in the media or whatever that was there watching, this is not going to be a boring offense. Like they're going to do stuff that they were not doing with Aaron Rodgers. And part of the reason is because they're more athletic now than they probably ever were with Aaron Rodgers at the tight end and wide receiver positions.
Yeah, and that's a storyline that's probably going to get blown out of proportion. This is the Matt LaFleur offense that Aaron Rodgers refused to run.
Right.
And I think maybe some of that's true, but some of it is they didn't have the personnel to run it. And Aaron can't run it the way Jordan's going to run it, and it'll be whatever. But you're right. I mean, they've got guys that are exciting, and I think they just are trying to figure out how do we get the ball in their hands? How do we facilitate this that we want Christian Watson still taking end arounds because he's one of the fastest guys in the NFL. We want to get the ball to Lucas Musgrave on some of those pop passes because he is a 6'5" gazelle. So, it'll be interesting. I think some of it is with a lot of that stuff. They probably have these packages and they're like, hey, we're going to go over this package today. And it's all the triple option, end around type stuff. That could be it. But yeah, they are an interesting group. You said exciting, and I am with you on that. I think they're going to be very exciting to watch. I think they're going to be frustrating to watch sometimes too, because we see what it can look like. And there is a difference. And I think Packers fans need to understand that as well. There is a difference between watching a frustrating offense just because they stink versus a frustrating offense because you have seen how good they can be. And I think that's what we're going to get out of this Packers team this year. I think they're going to have stretches where it's going to be like a warm knife through butter. And they're just going to say, why don't they just do that every time? And then we've seen it in training camp too. I was talking to Andy about this, just saying like, man, it seems like your tweets about practice are basically one of three things. It's perfect ball from Jordan Love dropped.
Yes, too many drops.
You know,
That's where I was going next. Yes.
Yeah, or Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is wide open. Great route. Love missed him.
Yep.
And that's the second one. And then the third one is, Christian Watson gets over the defense. Perfect ball from him, 75-yard touchdown, and we all go crazy.
Yep.
And I think like that's going to be what this team looks like, especially early in the year. And I think with this team, what we have to do and remember is it's maybe not what this team looks like in the first 8 weeks. It's what are they going to look like in the last 8 weeks? Once these rookies and young players have more experience under their belt, once Jordan gets over the, oh my God, I'm QB1. I've got to make every throw. Every touchdown matters early in his career. And it was the same way with Rodgers.
Yep.
Anyone that lived through that first Vikings game, that touchdown pass he threw to Corey Hall, it seemed like a weight was lifted off of everyone's shoulders because you're just like, okay, he's got one at least, So every play he's going to make is going to be scrutinized. He just needs to get experience under his belt where we're expecting those things. And I feel like in a lot of ways for this offense, we're getting to that point where the big plays and the fun, exciting plays are still fun and exciting, but we're already almost getting used to and more familiar with hearing those from like the Andy Hermans of the world, where it's like, okay, there's a few of them every practice. So it's going to be frustrating. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be everything in between.
Let's talk about the guy we haven't talked about, the guy that everybody's talking about, Jordan Love. You kind of hinted at it earlier about maybe they've figured out this whole quarterback thing in the NFL. He came out of Utah State. You had one opinion. Now you've watched him a little bit here. We still haven't seen a full regular season, so obviously the opinions can change again by the end of the season on what he really is. Has your opinion changed of what you thought he was coming out versus what he is now?
Not really. I loved him out of Utah State. I mean, I don't know if you saw it was like midway through his senior year or whatever his last year was, and I was like, man, Jordan Love would kind of be a fun first-round pick for the Packers. And I got dumped on.
Sure you did. That. Nobody's taking a quarterback. You got Aaron Rodgers.
And they took him, and I had to go find that and just be like, oh, But then it's funny, if you go back and read that tweet, you see like every year people talking about that. And like Ross Uglum, after like year 1 or year 2, he's like, I'm not having fun. And it's like, just wait. But with Jordan, it was a tale of 2 seasons at Utah State, and his redshirt junior or whatever his last year was there, he threw a lot of interceptions. He forced a lot of stuff, and it kind of put this impression in people's faces about, oh, he's the guy that's going to turn the ball over a bunch. He's Brett Favre. He's just a gunslinger out there putting the ball in harm's way. And I understand that because he did do that year. But you go talk to his coaches. What did they all say about him? Jordan's out here playing with almost, I think it was like 9 of 11 new starters on
line and wide receivers all changed. And he had former Badger coach Gary Anderson as his head coach, a whole new coaching staff. We had Gary Anderson on the Big Show after they drafted Jordan Love to talk about it. And he just talked about it was completely unfair to him, kind of the situation he got put in, but he kept his head up and did the best he could with what he had.
But then go back and look at his sophomore year.
He was a beast.
30. I mean, the touchdown interception, it was like 32-5. And so which guy are you getting? And everyone's talking about, oh, we're going to see a guy that throws a lot more interceptions than Aaron Rodgers, which is fair and probably true.
I think he'll throw more. Yeah.
That's everybody though. Right. But I don't think he's going to be Jameis Winston throwing 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions though either. And I think someone dropped, I think it was like, I don't know who it was, but someone had compiled all of his stats from training camp, which one is dumb. Like it's silly, fun to look at, but doesn't mean anything. I mean, they do red zone drills, they do all different stuff, but he threw in camp, I think he threw 31 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. And the touchdowns, like whatever, but the 5 interceptions, keeping that number low, I think does mean something. And yes, you can come back and say, well, he made some bad decisions. of interceptions and the ball was dropped. Yeah, but he also had a couple interceptions that were tipped that weren't his fault. Like that stuff always equals out, right? But if he can come out and take care of the ball like he has all training camp and kind of be, I don't want to say game manager because I feel like that's a dirty word, but a game manager that can go out and make plays out of structure. And every quarterback is a game manager. Like when you think of game manager, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be the poster boy of that forever and ever. Amen. Like that is who he is. But then talk about like Patrick Mahomes. 90% of the time, they're both doing the same stuff. They're hitting their open receivers. They're going where they're supposed to go with the football. It's that 10%. That 10% where Patrick Mahomes does Patrick Mahomes things that just humans can't do. And it's that 10% finding that spot. How much of that are we going to get out of Jordan Love? And I think that's where we're really going to see how great can he be. Because when he came out of Utah State, the three highest quarterbacks that Pro Football Focus had given a grade to on, out of structure type plays. Number 1 was Joe Burrow. Number 2 was Jordan Love. And so you look at him and you look at what he did at Utah State with some of that outer structure stuff, especially his sophomore year. He was doing really, really fun things when he had the pieces around him. And now he's been in Green Bay for 3 years. He's got these young receivers with him, so we're going to see some of those growing pains. But last year, Aaron Rodgers hardly practiced, right? Jordan Love probably has more reps with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson than Aaron Rodgers did. So I don't think the chemistry thing, especially with those two guys, I think he's going to lean heavily on those two young guys early as the Jaden Reeds and the Luke Musgraves kind of figure things out in the NFL. And both those guys look like they could be absolute home run picks as well. And so the Packers could go legit 4 deep at pass catchers early in Jordan Love's career. And I don't want to say Jordan Love is going to have a Joe Burrow-esque type rise or anything like that. But what did Joe Burrow have a ton of when he first started? He had a ton of talented pass catchers, and he still does. And they were also young, and he grew with them. The thing that Jordan Love has, young, talented pass catchers, but he actually has an offensive line, which Joe Burrow still doesn't have.
Yep.
And I think that piece of it is really underrated and underappreciated for, how is this young starting quarterback going to look his first year in the league?
I can't wait. Man, 23 is going to be fun. 24, you give all these young guys a chance to get in the weight room, add a little bit more muscle, figure out what they need to get through a full season, a year with their quarterback in the same offense, coming back the following year. 24 is going to be the year. 23, I still am between 7 and 10 wins, somewhere in that area probably. A lot of that's going to be dependent on the rookie kicker who they brought no competition in for, that I'm still pissed off about. But we won't do that and ruin Jacob Morley's night. Let's do confident, concerned, and curious here on the way out, just because that's what I've done on shows forever. Confident, concerned, and curious going into the Seahawks game. First, let's start about what we're confident in. They've already said they're playing their starters, both sides of the ball. And LaFleur said it's kind of be up to his gut, depending on when he pulls certain players after how many series and so forth. I'm confident that Jordan Love is not coming off the field till he throws a touchdown pass. So I'm going to say he throws at least 1 touchdown pass, maybe 2 if LaFleur is feeling froggy and wanting to really build his confidence. But I'm going to say he throws at least 1 touchdown pass, Jake.
Yeah, now you stole what I was going to say. I was going to say something like that, where it's like, I'm confident that LaFleur is going to play them until he's satisfied with what he sees.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm confident that if he goes out on that first series, throws 3 passes for 60 yards and a touchdown, Jordan Love's his night will be done. So I am confident, similar to you, that that's kind of what they're looking for.
I agree. And Love said it last week. He said that we were playing until he scored a touchdown. He flat out said that's what LaFleur pretty much told him. You're playing until you score. So you might play the whole half if you don't get in the end zone. Let's talk about concerns that we have going into this game. I'm going to just take the obvious one. It's exhibition game 3. You have 2 weeks off. I'm concerned that somebody of importance gets hurt. That's my concern. We can't have anybody of importance getting hurt in this football game. It just cannot happen. there's one person I'd be okay with, but I'm not going to say who that is. But I really at this point just want to make sure everybody gets out of this thing healthy, because if one of these starters get hurt, people are going to lose their minds on LaFleur that he was even playing starters in this game, even though he's not the only one. We've already seen several teams saying they're playing their starters this week. He's not going to be the only guy playing starters. Jacob Morley, concerns for you?
Well, Andy Reid plays his starters.
Yes.
They're the reigning Super Bowl champs. So
yep.
I'm at a point that if Andy's okay with it, I think we should all be okay with it. I think that guy knows what he's doing. Yes. Injuries, that's a concern all preseason. I mean, Packers fans know too well, seeing Jordy Nelson go down in a preseason game, seeing Brian Bulaga going down in a family night scrimmage.
Yep.
That's just the stuff you don't want to see, obviously. So that is always a concern. Keep those guys healthy. That is also why I was so dang proud of Zach Tom last week when the New England defender kind of jumped on Jordan's back, and he took exception to that, where it's like, hey, man, we've got big plans this season. Don't jump on my quarterback's back. So that's good. So I'll go a little bit different route because you're right. Injuries need to be always the number one thing you're concerned with in preseason. I'm concerned with Anders Carlson.
I didn't want to talk about him. I didn't want to talk about the man.
I don't think that's I'm not breaking any news there. And you're right, Spark. I don't know what they're doing. It is bizarre to me.
I do. I'll tell you. You might not listen to Curtin Long. He got drafted because of Bisaccia, who had his brother. He watched that kid grow up and has been around that kid for several years. And he told Goody, this is our guy. I don't want anybody coming in here and outdoing him and then being forced to cut somebody because he's better than my kid. We're riding with this guy. I don't want any pressure on him. I'll take care of it. That's what happened. And Goody said, yes, sir. You're the guy, Bisaccia. Whatever you want. He's the new Aaron Rodgers in the organization. So that's what we're going with Anders Carlson. Then they doubled down this week. And Goody said, hey, we got to have patience. We got to let him work his stuff out. Mason Crosby had a bad year. We stuck with him. We got to let it work itself out. Bisaccia comes up, says the same thing. Yeah. So they're setting it up. My big issue with this whole thing is, in Jordan Love's first year as a starter, if this kid costs them the playoffs because he misses 2 or 3 potential tying or winning kicks at the end of games, and they end up with 7 wins instead of 10 or something like that, because of that, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah. Rightfully so. And I think, you're probably right. And I'll say this about Bisaccia, though. That's the only reason that I have any glimmer of hope for this kid is because I think Rich Bisaccia is really, really good. And the thing about that, though, is you better be right. You better be right about him because the stakes are going to be so. Man, never mind. I'm not even going to go down that road. I'm not going to do the.
You brought it up.
Well, I'm just thinking hypothetical, games where he misses a kick, where Jordan Love gets the team in field goal range and he's the hero, and he goes out and misses a 28-yard field goal.
It could be week 1 against the Bears.
That's what I was going to say. I didn't want to even speak that. I don't want to speak that into existence, but it could be. That's what that's what the older brother did against the Packers when he was with the Vikings. He went out, I think it was week 1, right? Week 1, missed a game-winning field goal, was cut. And so I'm concerned. I'm concerned. I'm concerned even if Anders Carlson gets 7 field goal attempts from 50-plus yards in the preseason game and he nails every single one of them, I'm still concerned because we've seen enough of him missing that it's like, oh, man, do we trust this guy? Apparently the Packers do. I don't. You don't. But here we are. So that's my major concern, and that's kind of a major concern going into the season too.
Did you see the video that was posted on social media today by one certain kicker?
Oh, Mason? Yeah.
Mason Crosby. Just randomly puts out a field goal. Him kicking field goals.
I wonder if that's okay, so tinfoil hat, right? I wonder if that's part of their plan too. It's like, hey, Mason's sitting there. If this kid just isn't it, we'll give him all of training camp. We'll give him all of preseason. Mason would come in week 1 like he didn't miss a beat and be fine. Mason Crosby is also not who he used to be. I think we all can acknowledge that.
Agreed.
But if if I need a kicker to make a 30-yard field goal to win the game, I'm closing my eyes and kicking back and relaxing if it's Mason Crosby. He's going to make that. So you can't say the same for Anders, to say the least.
And he's never played in the swirling winds in Lambeau in the wintertime or none of that stuff.
That's the other thing. That is the other thing. And now we're getting all that. I don't want to hear the excuses that it's
going to happen.
Because guess what? It gets windy in Green Bay. And guess what? They also play in Chicago. I think they call that the Windy City.
They do.
Yeah. Maybe figure that out. Maybe figure that part out. Jeez.
Drives me nuts. The whole thing just infuriates me. It's the only position on the entire roster they brought no competition in for.
Well, think about this. We gave Goody his flowers. He's great at certain positions. He's been god awful at special teams. God awful. I mean, he has drafted all of them now, right? A punter, a snapper, and a kicker.
Yep.
Where are the punter and the snapper again? Are they on the team? Did they work out?
No. And right now, Whelan is going to win that punting job, I think. There's a chance he's going to win that punting job.
I think so, too, because they're going to save money.
Yeah,
I think
they saved
like a decent amount of money to get rid of O'Connell. Or O'Donnell.
Right, but the question then becomes, do you want a rookie punter and a rookie kicker? Is that something you want to go down? Because that rookie punter now has to hold for the rookie kicker.
Yeah, I don't know. What does Mason want? Here's what I'll say. What does Mason want? Let Mason make the decision and bring him back.
This whole thing with special teams, God bless Masaccio. He better get it right. All right, what are you curious about? Last question. We'll wrap up Kurt and Long. What do you got?
I'm curious about the safety position. I think Anthony Johnson Jr. was a guy that was starting to kind of come on a little bit, and now he looks like he's hurt. So who's going to start? I think Andy Herman was talking about it today. I thought he brought up a great point. He's like, I think there's one guy that I'm going to say for sure at the safety position that's going to make this team, and it's Savage.
Right.
And then there's about 5 other guys that you could say, is this guy going to make the team, or is he going to start? He could be a starter week 1, or he could be a street free agent. Like, that's just kind of where they're at. So I would love it if one of those guys just took hold of that job. I mean, I think it's going to be a weak spot all year, regardless of who's back there. But I would at least like it if somebody would come forward and be like, I should be the starter, because I feel like they've all been the same. So
I think
we'll see with that.
I think it's going to be Ford. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Barry's going to go back to Ford because he's had Ford out there. He's played with Ford. Now, they've given Owens a lot of love. He started all the games last year for the Texans. He's been in the battles. He's seen all the quarterbacks, yada, yada, yada. So they're setting it up if they go that way as well. But I guess I think it's going to be Ford.
Go ahead. I think Owens has looked the worst out of those 3 of your guys that could actually start Ford, Owens, and Moore. I think Owens is the worst, but we'll see.
I am curious to see where Zach Tom plays on this line throughout this time that he's out on the field. Will they actually put him at center in an exhibition game and send Myers to the sideline? Will they do that? Will they do Walker at right tackle or left tackle and instead of Bakhtiari? Will we see that? Will we see some version of an offensive line that is going to leave us scratching our heads and everybody else scratching their heads as far as what they're going to do going into the regular season? Or are they going to play it straight the way they've been playing it, run out the same starting 5, not change anything, and not really make any substitutions or adjustments? That's what I'm curious to see. He has Jacob Morley. Follow him on Twitter at Jacob Morley. Of course, Packer Report, 24/7 Sports, Pack a Day Podcast, like everybody except me. And then you can follow me at Sparky Radio, only because Andy Herman's never invited me. I've never been on a single Pack a Day podcast in my life. Did you realize that?
Put the beacon out there, Sparky.
I'm just saying, I've never been invited by any of them. I have all you guys on. I've never been invited. Probably because y'all don't think I'm that good. That's all right, though. Jacob Morley, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Download Kurt Along today, Odyssey, or on your Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at, and Odyssey Sports YouTube channel as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. Toodles.